might be asking, like, why did it take so long to go through everything? Because I chose to do it that way. You can go to accelerated programs and get your training done from like nothing all the way to CFI in 1 year. But for me, I was still working full time because I had to pay for my tuition. When I pulled out student loans, I only used those loans for flight training. So I had to work full time still so that I could pay for tuition, which was expensive for me at that time. I also really like to have a social life. And so I just didn't want to be doing it like 24/7. I was in school and flight training Monday through Friday. And then Friday at about, I don't remember, however late college students get together. It's probably 8 or 9 p.m. I'd finally stop studying. And then I wouldn't study again until Monday morning. And so I just, because of working and the social life that I wanted, and also I took summers, I didn't really do too much flight training. I just focused more on getting my degree during the summer and taking extra classes. It took me a little bit longer to get my flight training, but I would not change that. Like, it was perfect for me. So if you're going to go through training, you just have to decide, like, do you, like, what it is that you want? How do you want your life to look? I wanted to enjoy every minute of my life, and that's how I found that I, would make me the most happy. It did take me 3 years to get my bachelor's degree, and then the 4 years before I was flight instructing. The nice thing was the school that I did all my training and education at, I was able to get hired there and become a flight instructor there. Now, I know that there's so many people that don't want to do the flight instruction route. That's fine. I'm still going to recommend that you get your CFI, because in the process of getting that CFI certificate, I learned so much, and I didn't feel qualified to be an instructor, but almost because it made me so fearful, I was like, I've got to just try this. I've got to just do it. And so I did it. I jumped in, got my license. Took me a while to get that. It was probably about that, the 1 year with all the studying and courses and everything that I did to get the license. But when I started teaching, when I started doing the flight instructor thing, it was just such a change from any other job that I'd ever done. I loved it. It was definitely nerve-wracking in the beginning because I didn't know everything. I got really good at being able to find stuff in books. Like, oh, I can't remember the answer to that, but I know it's in the pilot's handbook in chapter 13. And so I turned there with my students. But I thought I knew a lot, and I did. I learned a lot when I got my flight instructor certificate. The amount of knowledge that I learned actually teaching was like double or maybe even triple what I had learned up to that point. If you're on the fence of being a CFI, I'd recommend trying it out because you may end up really enjoying it. I loved flight instructing so much that I ended up doing it for 5 years. And honestly, I kind of got in this comfort zone where I was like, maybe I'll just stay here forever because I love it so much and the pay is fine, which pay was not great. I think I was making 30, maybe 40,000 a year, which for me at that time was a lot of money, but you don't want to go your whole life only making 30 or 40 grand. You can't survive off that. I started getting an itch to go to the airlines. I was married by this time, and I told my husband, I was kind of nervous because I'm like, this is a pretty big life change. And when I told him that I wanted to try the airline pilot thing out, I told him I was super nervous about it. I didn't know if I was smart enough to do it. And he's like, well, just try it out. It's not like you have to go do it and then that's the end of your life and you're stuck in it if you don't love it. Just go and give it a try. I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. So committed to just studying my butt off, getting hired. The only regional airline that I really wanted to work for was SkyWest Airlines. And I think it's just because I'd had so many friends who had gotten hired there and they loved it. And also I was living in Salt Lake. And so if I got hired there, I knew that I had a possibility of still being based in Salt Lake. So I wouldn't have to move because that seemed really scary at the time. I got some really great gouges for the interview and I studied like crazy. I think for 6 months before I was even ready to put my application in. And I remember submitting the application. I was so nervous. Like, okay, just hit the submit button because I knew they were hiring like crazy. And I'd had enough references and letters of recommendation from people who worked at SkyWest Airlines. I knew I would get the interview. Well, I was pretty sure, 99% sure. I did get the interview, which was amazing. The first few months at the airlines were really hard because it was such a life adjustment. I went from making my own schedule. If I wanted a day off, I could have it, to getting through training, and it was intense. And again, I had learned so much as a flight instructor, those first 3 months of training at an airline like doubled my knowledge again, but in such a short amount of time that I wasn't used to. It really was a fire hose of information. But I survived the training, and then I got out on the line. I was on reserve, which it just means you're on call. You don't have a set schedule. You don't know where you're going to be flying. They call you when they need you. So I was doing that initially, and it was really hard because we were living in Salt Lake, and my husband still had his Monday through Friday full-time job in Salt Lake. And then I was super junior on reserve in Palm Springs, California, which the commute from Salt Lake to Palm Springs is incredibly difficult because the flights, at least during that time, there was 2 flights a day, sometimes 3 or 4, depending on the season. They were always full. So I usually had to try to get to Palm Springs through Las Vegas or LA, or I did Phoenix a couple times. It was just, I was basically leaving for work a whole day before I was even on reserve. And because I was junior, I was on reserve on the weekends, and it was always at 4 a.m. So that sucked. I'm not going to lie. That was really, really hard. Let's see. So I got hired at SkyWest in August, 3 months of training. And then I got a glimpse of how amazing being a line holder is in February of 2013. I just had the line for the 1 month, but it was so nice. I got a glimpse of like, I can have control of my schedule again. I don't have to be on call at 4 a.m. and always have my bag packed. I can just pack it the day before my trip and go on my trip. And the other thing was, in February of that year, me and my husband had decided to move to Palm Springs, so I didn't have to do that commute anymore. In July, so almost that 1 year mark from when I'd gotten hired, I became an official line holder. Like, things at the company started moving. So I went from being basically the very bottom, and I moved all the way up to like 50-ish% in July. And then it was like 2 months after that, I was bidding number 5 in Palm Springs, which was amazing. So right at my year mark, which would have been in August of 2013, that was when I was going to decide, do I want to stay doing this, or do I want to leave and go back to flight instructing? Because I knew I loved flight instructing. But at that 1 year mark, when I'd gotten the glimpse of how nice it is to be a line holder, we were living in base, we loved California, I just knew that at that point, there was no way I was going to quit being an airline pilot. Like, it's just so amazing. About a year after I had been at SkyWest Airlines, I was in the flight deck of the major airline that I work for now, talking to the pilots. The first officer had asked me if I had my application in at this specific company. And I kind of laughed because I was like, no, I'm super young. I'm a first officer on a Brasilia, which is a propped airplane. I'm not qualified to even apply for that company. Like, they're huge and glamorous and they fly all these cool airplanes. And that's what I was thinking. I didn't say that to him, but I was just like, no, I don't have my application in. I'm just a first officer, at SkyWest. And he said, I got hired here as a first officer from a regional airline too. So you should just put your application in. It's like, even if you don't think you're qualified, you never know exactly what they're looking for. And the application takes a really long time to fill out. It's not something you can just do in 20 minutes. He was like, just get it in, and then every single month update your hours. That way, when you do have the qualifications, you've already done all the hard work. It's like, oh, yeah, I guess I could do that. So I did it. I filled out the application. It took me a while. It was probably a month to have it fully filled out with all the letters of recommendation and all of the past addresses and everything that has to go into an application for a major airline. So I just had it sitting in there. I actually did submit it because I was like, there's no harm in submitting it. And every single month for the rest of the time I was at SkyWest Airlines, I updated that application. But it took me, under 5 minutes to log in, update my hours in a few spots, and then log out. So it wasn't a big deal. And it made it so nice because then when my opportunity came to meet someone at this major airline, I was flying the flight from Seattle to Portland, and the main guy who did the hiring at this company was on my flight. After the flight was over, we got there. He was the last one off the plane. We chatted for a minute, and he asked me if I had my application in. It was so nice to be able to say, actually, yes, I do. The second thing he asked me was, okay, well, do you want to email me tonight? And then I can look over your application. I'll have the team look over your application. And if you qualify among our competitive candidates, we're going to invite you for an interview. You never know how it's going to happen, guys. right? So just get your application and update it every month. Like, it doesn't take that much time out of your day, and it will help you in the long run. I emailed him that night, and the next day I had an invitation to interviewed, and then got hired at a major airline, which is where I am now. So that's a very condensed version of my aviation journey, you know, and everybody's journey is different, but my recommendation for you would be to just make it so that you can enjoy every day of the journey. There's so many pilots I've met throughout the years that are like, well, when I have my private pilot's license, then I'll be happy. Or when I'm making money being a pilot, then I'll be happy. Or like, I can't be happy until I'm a major airline pilot and I'm making X amount of dollars. That sucks. Like, that's not the way to live. Find out what's going to make you happy now. Like, how can you enjoy your flight training at the phase you're in, and do that. Don't listen to what everybody else is saying, because I had so many people tell me, like, you need to go to ATP. You need to go to an accelerated flight school and just get this done. But I was just like, I'm not going to be happy with that. It's going to be too stressful for me. Just make sure that however you choose to do it, just find joy in the entire journey, right? And just make it so that you have this life that every step of the way has been totally incredible. Until next time, happy flying. And as always, if you have any questions, you can always email me, trendypilots@gmail.com, or you can find me. I'm very active on Instagram, Trendy Pilots, but I'm also on Facebook as well at Trendy Pilots.